Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a big thank you to Karen, Tina, Michael, and Daniel for being our guests. My name is Zamira, and I'm the Content and Events Manager at Kenjo. We are an all-in-one HR software company from Germany with offices in Berlin and Madrid. And we have teamed up with Rising to bring you this panel discussion on recruiting for international leadership roles. Interestingly, Kenjo and Rising sit in the same co-working space. So we are so happy that today we could collaborate with our neighbors. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of a rundown of the agenda today. I'm going to introduce the topic, give you all a little insight into Kenjo's personal recruiting story while we're recruiting our executive leadership team. I will then introduce you to Karen, who will talk more about Rising. She will then introduce the panelists and jump straight into the discussion. At the end, we will have 15 minutes of Q&A, followed by closing remarks from myself. A little housekeeping for all the attendees in the audience. As you've seen, you all will be muted throughout the discussion, so please send in your questions via the chat box in English at any time. At the end, I will try and get the panelists and the moderator to answer all your questions. However, please be aware that in a 1-hour panel discussion, it is impossible for us to answer all the questions. So today we're recording the panel and we're going to send you the recorded version in an email with all the information tomorrow. We're also going to keep track of all the questions you've asked, and if there are any burning questions, we will also send you answers to that via email. So I'm now going to move to Kenjo's recruiting journey. This is a particularly special topic for us. Our company was founded by our CTO and CEO, and then we went on a very interesting journey to hire the rest of our C-suite executive team. They really make our business and organization come to life. We started with our chief people officer, and then we recruited our chief growth officer. And from there on, you can see the two other titles on the slide. They all come from different countries with different profiles, diverse skills and backgrounds. That is super important for our culture. We believe that leadership and executive roles don't have a singular profile. However, we do understand that many of you in our audience today come from different types of organizations. So your idea of an executive might differ. However, for us, it was super important to find leadership talent that fits in with our culture, understands the dynamicism of a startup, and has a diverse background. So I'm also going to give you guys insight on a case study of one of our clients, Frische, because we really helped them scale and recruit and find a lot of their talent. Frische is a fast-growing digital direct sales platform for regional and sustainably produced food in Germany. They deliver local food directly from farmers to urban consumers and thrive on creating total transparency about the origin and manufacturing process of each product. Interestingly, we organized and managed 60 new hires in just a few months for them using our singular software. This helped them to attract, retain, and onboard many of their current employees in leadership positions. So this software feature of Kenjo is called our applicant tracking software, which allows SMEs to recruit the right people using one tool with ease and efficiency. It's highly customizable, allows for automated workflows, LinkedIn integration, quick CV review, and third-party access. So as I had mentioned, we're going to send you a bunch of follow-up emails. So please keep an eye out for them, because in them, we're also going to send you a link to a 14-day free trial to Kenjo software. So you can try out our ATS feature. And we will also include an Excel template to help you with your recruiting processes. I would now like to introduce our esteemed moderator, Karen Kargar. She's the founder and CEO of Rising. Originally born and raised in the US, Karen moved to Berlin in 1994 and has worked across global communications and executive recruiting. She is now going to tell us more about her journey with Rising and her experience.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Amira. Hi, there we go. So thank you very much to Amira. Thanks to Kenjo for initiating the collaboration. They reached out to us, and I would like to point out we're in the same building, but none of us have been there for about a year. And the co-working space is called Heart Space, and I have to kind of shout out to the Heart Space team who pointed out to us that we have a lot in common and that maybe we should speak in the pandemic time when none of us have been in the building. So, you know, high five to Heart Space for doing that. They got us together. You'll be hearing a lot about me or from me over the next 50 minutes and from the panelists. So I won't speak a lot. I would like to give you just one slide about Rising. Amir, could you put that slide up, please? And it will be quick, I promise, because I know you really want to hear from the others and not more about our company. So Rising is our company. I'm the CEO and founder, as Amira said, and we are a next generation talent attraction agency for cities and companies. And we're building a human-centric ecosystem for sustainable growth in a digital world, the human piece in the future of a technology-driven world. So how do we do this? We have two categories of services. One is Rising Cities. And Rising Cities is, we work closely with cities. Many of you, or some of you might know our campaign, Because Berlin. We do talent attraction campaigns and advisory for cities to help them welcome globally mobile talent in the technology industry. The other half of our work is people-focused, meaning executive search and coaching, advisory for leaders. And we have a holistic approach to finding and supporting visionary leaders in the tech industry. It's a global approach, so we can recruit anybody from anywhere. We did a lot of work with Silicon Valley executives in the past, and as we all know, there is no one hub anymore for the tech industry. There are many all over the world in many cities, and we work globally. So that's how we do it. And what do we mean? Building a sustainable ecosystem in a digital world. We believe that by building a community that connects these two networks, that we're empowering a global ecosystem with talent in the center. So that's how we work. And today, of course, we're talking more about executive search. So that's what the topic is. And the way we work is that we're retained for tech companies, whether they're global or local startups. And our worldwide services include a lot of analysis and research. We work very closely with our clients. And we have a creative team as well. So with our creative studio, we can also help build employer branding strategy and tools. That's enough about me and Rising. And I'd love now to see everybody's faces again and let them introduce themselves. And I think I will start with Daniel Iles, who also goes by Dan. So I'm going to keep it short and say, hey, Dan. And I think it's nicer for each of you to say a few words about yourselves because you each have a personal story that fits the topic today as well. Could you introduce yourself, Dan, and maybe a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Hi, team. My name is Dan. I'm head of people at Vinted, also known as Kleider Kreisel, formerly in Germany. We are Europe's largest second-hand fashion platform. Before Vinted, I ran the people function at Drover, which has recently been acquired by Kazoo. It's a car subscription, next generation car platform. And in the past, I actually worked in operating roles in other tech companies in the US and in the UK. And in an even earlier past, I was a lawyer. And so throughout the past several years, I've engaged a lot in hiring leadership roles, and sort of still do that to this day as part of my role. So excited to be here and hopefully have an interesting conversation.
Thanks, Dan. That's great. And Tina, how about you?
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina. I'm the Director of People and Culture for Amorelie. And who doesn't know what Amorelie is? We are in the e-commerce sex toys business. I hope everybody is aware of that platform. I am a real Berliner, I would say. I've born and raised in Berlin, although I have an American father and a German mother. But I would call myself a real Berliner. I have around 20 years experience in HR already, feeling quite old today when I put that together. So I worked for, I started off my career as a headhunter, and then I worked for many years for Sony. I worked for Apple. I worked for DDB, an international marketing agency. And at the moment I'm working for Amorelie. And more maybe on a personal note, I'm a single mom of 2 and struggling in COVID times for the past year. I'm just happy to be wearing makeup and normal clothes today for this event. That's the most exciting bit about it.
Thanks, Tina. I think each of us has a child in school for the first time in 4 or 5 months today, since yesterday. No, we have two, the 7, 8, 9s. So yeah, thanks for that. And Michael.
Good morning, everyone. Very obviously, my name is Michael. I'm the Chief People Officer of WeFox. For the people who don't know WeFox, we are basically revolutionizing the insurance world. So everyone who thinks like insurance is boring, it's not with us. So really trying to drive innovation here. I'm coming with more than 13 years HR experience. I started off in the corporate world at Deutsche Post, DHL, and Amazon. So really the big monsters of companies, and then at some point moved to Berlin for a change, and also made then a change in career, working since then in startups and scale-ups. Helped Booking.com and N26 to scale, and now trying to achieve a similar thing with WeFox.
Thank you, Michael. You proved that it's not boring by the clock. The clock makes it exciting. So I'm going to go to the first question, and I'll ask each of you this question. I might mix things up as we go through and not ask everyone the same question. So one of the questions we want to hear about today is, how do you know it's the right time to hire an international executive? When do you hit that point? Now you have really different experiences. I'm going to ask Tina to start with that, because I like how you have these quite different experiences, from the global giants to the creative agency to Amorelie. So what's your experience been with that, Tina? And how did you know it was the right time?
Well, I have different experience with Sony, Apple, of course, big corporations that are very international. And we've always hired international talents because it's an international brand. With GDB and the marketing agency, it was more about gaining a customer. In this case, it was Volkswagen, where it was an international customer, and we had to hire international talents because only with the German mindset, despite it being Volkswagen, we would not be able to represent the brand in a correct way. So there we had to really hire from all over the world talents in order to represent the brand well. And with Amorelie at the moment, we're expanding. So we started in Germany and Doch region, and now we're expanding to France, Belgium, and looking into new countries at the moment. And hence, yeah, of course, we have to hire talents for those upcoming countries that we're entering. Mm-hmm. And overall with Amorelie, of course, we're very strong in e-commerce. So as we all know, IT talents are not to be found only in Berlin. So we really have to look globally where there's IT profiles. Again, to PHP, who's ever hired in that direction knows that it's not only up to Berlin to find those talents.
Mm-hmm. Great. Michael, what about you? What's your experience? When have you known it's the right time?
So in general, I think there's always the right time to hire international senior leaders, no matter if it's an executive role or if it's a VP or director role. Knowing from all the past experiences is that basically the company and the product is shaping where you want to go as an organization, but then to bring that to life, that needs the core leaders, senior leaders in the company. If we really want to build something on a global scale, I think we all know you need to start think big at the very beginning of your journey, and that also requires the right set of leaders coming from all different places. So if you want to become a big player at some point, I think having senior leaders, international senior leaders, is quite early necessary.
Mm-hmm. And I'll stick with everybody for this one question because it's really important. Dan, what would you say, and what was your experience?
Yeah, I echo the other panelists. I would say there's a few factors that play into that decision. I think from my perspective, it depends on your ambitions as a business. So if for example, you're looking at international expansion and really starting to explore markets outside of your own, adding that sort of diversity of thought to your team, having another international, adding an international voice to your leadership team could really help expand perspective. So that's one good time, I think. Another one might be a talent pool consideration. If you're in a smaller ecosystem and you're growing fast as a company, you're actually outgrowing much of the ecosystem itself. And there are a few people with having seen the kind of scale that you're about to go to or you're already at, you may have no choice but to kind of expand your search and look internationally. So I would say it's either a kind of pool consideration or it's a question of adding that really important diversity to your team.
I'm going to go right to the next question with you, Dan, because I think you'll overlap. So the strategy. So you talked a bit about strategy there already. So the right time and what's the right strategy? They're obviously very closely connected. And I know the audience today was, we heard in advance that people wanted to hear about strategy. So you already mentioned a few things that are part of the strategy. And what about, fitting the long-term journey, I think is something you find important. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, you mean, so how do we think, like, what's the strategy for doing this basically?
You think, okay, now's the time. And how should we look for that person? What's important?
Yes, I think especially when it comes to executives and senior leadership talent, the really, and this is important throughout for any role in recruitment, but I think particularly important in leadership to really get really clear on what you're after. So, company might identify a need to hire a, say, head of product. There's a lot of types of heads of product out there. There are sort of commercial focused business leaders. There are more sort of delivery focused project management leaders. There are, you've got to consider your own current exec team. So if you're adding a product leader to your exec team, what are the skills and sort of personalities and traits already strong on the team? What does this vacancy, what skills and qualities can you add to your executive team by hiring this new head of product? So you get really, really clear on the kind of profile you're after and the map, right? So figure out like who are these people? What's your market that you're going to go after? If you're in a startup in Berlin, you probably want to look at Berlin, a couple of other key ecosystems in Europe. You can look further, but chances are people are probably not going to want to relocate for much further. So who are the people that have the skills and the experience to actually perform the role that you want to hire for? Map those people, find the companies, and then sort of either create a strategy to pursue them internally and source or hire a firm to help you figure it out. And then run a really sort of tight process. And again, I think I keep coming back to what are you looking for? Ideally, you have a scorecard where you really detail. So these are the skills, qualities, experiences, knowledge, etc. that you're after. Design a process that really checks for those things. So yeah, I guess the key thing for me is just don't just say I want to have a product, be really clear on what that profile looks like.
Thanks, Dan. Michael, would you like to add to that? Because I know you also have some very clear ideas about strategy.
Yeah, so I do think what comes into play here additionally is that hiring international leaders comes with two dimensions basically. Can I hire an international leader from Germany? Yes, of course I can. It depends on their experience, their scope of roles in the past. So have they been focusing in their role on a very national focus, or have they already been leading a team or a bigger function across different countries? And of course, and that's then coming more into having people from different countries or from different origins. Of course, it's also important, but that then goes a bit more into the diversity piece of hiring. So how do I want to structure my executive team or senior leader team? What are the different backgrounds I want to see? You need as an organization, but also what comes with that. Talking about diversity of thinking, diversity of expertise, diversity of background. So that all at the end plays into the strategy. You need to have been defined upfront, because otherwise you don't know what you're searching for at the end of the day. So what Dan said, I can really echo that definition piece. Is a very, very important piece, because otherwise you are screwing up down the line, because you don't really find those people you actually need as an organization.
Thanks, Michael. Tina, would you like to add anything? I mean, it's hard to be the third one because they already said everything, maybe. Or is there anything particular?
Not really, but I just find that Berlin gives a great international pool. Maybe in that case, you don't sometimes have to look so far. We just, for example, entered the French market, and it was easy for us to find the French talents in Berlin, because it is such a big international city, and with lots of nice competitors like Zalando, who are hiring for us basically, and we can just kind of go to another pool. So that's helped us a lot, not having to go to other countries to look for talents, but stay within Berlin.
I think that's fascinating because of the cities, of course, since we're interested in cities, because you can find more global talent in the cities now, which is exciting. That wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago. So I think that's really exciting. I'm going to stick with Tina. And so we want to move a bit away from strategy right now. And I mean, we could talk about all of these topics forever, but we don't have much time. And so we want to talk a little bit about, past your basic strategies, employer branding strategies. We find that really important at Rising. As we said, we have a creative studio just for that. We have a communications background. We think it's important that companies work together with marketing teams. And I want to ask Tina, because you each of the three of these panelists have a completely different experience and perspective. And Tina's is particularly interesting. So how do you deal with employer branding when it comes to executive talent?
Yeah, it's a bit funny with Amorelie at the current moment. So I think the key first employer branding is employee. So the employers, it's best if our employees promote Amorelie. What the challenge we have at the moment on LinkedIn, for example, is that when we share things on LinkedIn with Amorelie, people don't really like Amorelie on LinkedIn, because some people don't want to be seen as liking sex toys. So we really go through the page impressions. So we can see, maybe, for example, sometimes I post an article on the sex report and basically 3 people like it, but I can see I have like 5,000 views. So it's a bit of a thing that it's not really being shared. So we just have to kind of trust in the views in this case. But our employees are the best ambassadors. And I think we're becoming proud, because our mission is to become, sexual happiness everywhere. And by our employees sharing those posts, it's really showing that they're proud of it, and people are becoming more open to like our posts in the future. But it's a bit of a challenge regarding employer branding. And yet we get a lot of initiative. We talked about this Initiativbewerbung, like lots of people who apply for Amorelie who really want to revolutionize the industry, and we really go through that channel. And it's a really good employer branding in that sense, that we get a lot of applications this randomly just asking us if there's any open position.
Yeah. Funny enough, it reminds me of Apple, right? One of your former employees. So you have people who just say, I really want to work for this company. Yeah. But now you're talking about a sex toy company, where then it was Apple, but it's the similar, it sounds like a similar, it's probably a similar situation,
commerce,
right?
It's electronics, it's have it in your hand, it's all working out together.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Tina. Let's see, Dan, how do you work with, now Vinted is a different story, because I think with Vinted, with your topic, that's very, people do like that, and they're proud, and they want to show that they, they want to, sustainable clothing. Is it a different situation with you? And do you use a lot of employer branding for executive recruiting? Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, I'm just going to say my internet's been acting up the past couple minutes, so apologize in advance if you lose me. Yes, I mean, I would say that we definitely rely heavily on our mission as a attraction tool. And there's, our leadership team, without exception, are super purpose-led, and I'd sort of be able to, I'd be willing to say that we all joined to a large extent because of this ability to work at a sustainability focused company that has genuine potential. And we really we work that angle a lot when it comes to international recruiting. I think for a lot of, and I would say it actually allows us to attract leaders who, who have been there, done that, may have, even made a lot of money in their career, but are really looking for that next thing where they can make a difference in the world. And so having this angle is really amazing for us. So yeah.
I was quiet because you can hear noise in my hallway. As executive recruiters, we have that experience as well, of course, with a startup, senior executive leaders. That's the exciting part for them, something different, making a change, having an impact. And that said, I know that Michael has another opinion on employer branding, which I found really exciting. So we talk about it a lot at Rising, and the importance of employer branding. And when you reach out to people, make sure you have that all in place and all that. And Michael, what do you think about that? I know you were just talking about this recently with your team.
Yes, so I do think employer branding, like what Tina and Dan already said, like very specific to your organization. So you really need to, on the one hand side, really understand the organization you're working in, but on the other hand, also you need to go with the flow a little bit, even if you have amazing, crazy ideas, which might not work out for your organization you're currently working in. What I found very important, I've seen that in a couple of organizations I've worked in before, is that the executive team itself is a huge part of employer branding, and really shaping the narrative of your organization. So with executive hiring, for me, always it's very important to also be very upfront that for someone new coming on board, that person will be part of that employer branding journey of the organization. And even like seeing that now at WeFox, and I've experienced that at N26 before as well, like the financial industry is not the most sexy one. So it's like you're getting normally, at least to a certain extent, more of the traditional people who having a very set in stone way of thinking on how should those kind of businesses working. Getting people in who are coming with a more modern, innovative mindset and approach then also gives you a lot of opportunity as an organization to really shape your employer branding into a different perspective. So then it doesn't matter what industry you're in, like those kind of people are really helping to create an employer branding which is which can change the narrative basically, not only for you as an organization but also for the industry. And I do think you can see that at N26 that has worked out quite well over the last years. And for us at WeFox, it basically goes exactly in the same direction. So working with the executive team on, okay, what is the message we want to send out externally, but also what kind of message do we want to send out internally to all of our employees, because they are obviously part of the branding as well. And how can we develop that moving forward to make it an attractive picture at the end of the day.
I'm going to stick with you because this flows really well into the next question and situation. So say we get this perfect match and they're on board, they want to be part of the journey and they want to build up things with you at WeFox. So how do you handle onboarding when that person comes? So say they came because they do want to be part of something that's maybe not yet finished, and that's the exciting part about it. What happens when they get there? You can't say, all right, so do it. Go create the culture. Go ahead. How do you handle onboarding in a case like that?
Yeah. So I do think as a point of starting here, the most important piece for me is always that normally executives are choosing their companies very carefully. So it's basically more the executives choosing you rather than you choosing the executives. And that creates a bit of a different baseline to onboarding compared to other people you're getting into the organization. So onboarding is, for me, much more important even than the initial hiring process, because you want to make sure that your key leaders coming into the business, having the opportunity to get a kickstart, having potentially the same or an even better experience during onboarding than they had during the hiring process, because at the end of the day, the first 100 days matter. So if you're fucking up, like, sorry for my language, the first 100 days, then it's very likely that that those people already are in their mind moving on, because if you're having an amazing profile as a leader, it's potentially very easy to find a new gig somewhere else. So onboarding is very structured onboarding, and an extended onboarding process is very important. That means, you need to have you need to get this person included into the executive team or in the senior leader team quite quickly, giving opportunities to connect with all the other key members of the leadership team, to be able to build out relationships, to be able to understand what has happened in the organization so far, why is the organization looking like at this point in time, how it looks like, and what's the key strategy to move forward. And then also giving time to really understand. It's not done in 3 weeks. It's basically onboarding of an executive takes 6 months or longer if you really want to make it a very efficient piece of work, and that needs moderation and support. So onboarding, I think, is even more key than the hiring process itself.
Well, one doesn't make sense without the other, really, right? It doesn't make sense to do that big executive search, I mean, our words, and then not help with the onboarding, because they can go wrong. And it could also leave a bad, if they do leave, it's not only painful and a waste of time and money, but it's a bad reputation risk as well, right?
Yeah.
So.
And often you see and hear like the expectation towards an executive saying like, okay, that person is so senior, he can figure it out on his own, or she can figure it out on herself. No, absolutely not. Like it coming in on that level, it's so complex what you need to go through. You need that support, no matter how much experience you have.
Absolutely. Leadership can be a lonely place up there. So help everybody, please. If anyone's help for leaders, they need help too. Tina, I'm gonna go to you on the same question. Onboarding. I mean, again, I think you have a different situation than Marie about onboarding. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. First of all, yeah, I 100% agree with Michael. Whatever he said, that was very key. I would even say like hiring is 30% and onboarding is 70% of the whole journey. Because it makes the big difference. I think especially in remote times as we are now, again, even more, really mapping out the stakeholders. And what we do at Amorelie is even have specific mentors for specific skill sets where we feel that the executive would need additional support other than their normal line manager. So this is where we really scope out again who can help from a cultural point of view, who can help from a network point of view. Is there maybe even someone outside of Amorelie in our overall network that can help on the political, level? So to give that person the support. And yeah, regular check-ins, like you said, even with executives, they need to have a check-in, and also HR is an important function here to really have a trust in what is going well and what are they not understanding, even on that level. And you're so right, Michael was saying, even that's the biggest mistake, thinking, oh, they're really smart and everybody's knowing what they're going to do, and no, they cannot have that on all levels.
Okay, so we heard it again. So I won't point it out again. It's really important. And Dan, I know you have some opinions on this as well, and even some interesting things to read maybe about the subject. Dan, can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I really agree with both Tina and Michael here. I think I actually think about it as integration even rather than onboarding. So I think the word integration emphasizes the kind of two-way element of this. Starts as soon as your offer is accepted, all the way to at least kind of 6 months in, and it's a big part around really making time for this executive and helping them understand the unofficial org chart of this company. So how do people make decisions? What are the kind of cultural norms for making change in this company? But then at the same time remaining open to what they're bringing to the table. You're hiring them because you want that outside perspective. You want that sort of seasoned experience, having seen the kind of scale that you're at. And so it's like a balancing exercise between really getting them up to speed with what you have already, and then really remaining open and integrating the two together. I think really social inclusion can go a really long way. I think people tend to forget how important it is for new hires, and I think this is especially true for executive talent, where you don't have that many peers to make a tremendous effort, making them feel like they're part of the team, making them feel like they belong from day one. So it's not just about sitting down with them and walking them through the lay of the land and sort of strategy, etc. It's also making the effort to go out to dinner with them, get lunch with them, making them part of the team. I think it's also super important. And I think it's a long process. I mean, a lot of, I think, international leaders, it takes, especially during COVID, when communication is harder, it can take up to 6 to 9 months before they can really get up to speed. So sort of don't give up after week one, keep at it, check in, make it agile, etc.
Thanks. I'm going to remind you, you mentioned a book to me, and I'm going to stay with you here for a minute and ask you the next question too. I'm going in the direction of cultural differences. So you talked about a book that you found interesting, and again, you call it more integration and intercultural, which is almost old school now, because we're talking about so many different versions of diversity, but the good old, people from different countries in the same room, it's still work to make that happen.
Yeah, so it's the book is called The Culture Map by Erin Mayer, and it's probably one of the most mind-blowing reads I've had the pleasure of coming across this year. It's really about cultural differences in business, and how sort of different countries have very different norms around how people interact with each other at work, with the superiors, with bosses interact with their direct reports, how people make decisions, how people relate to time. And for me, it was a tremendous eye-opening experience. I live in London, but I work for a Lithuanian HQ company, and a lot of things, frankly, were just a bit strange to me when I first joined. Some of the cultural norms I discovered, and I think this book really helped me kind of see things from another perspective, and actually be a lot more, just build a lot more empathy for why some things might seem strange to me. They probably feel the same way about some of my things that I'm trying to introduce. And if you're in an intercultural context, you work for a company with a different culture, or there's lots of cultures on your team, I highly recommend giving it a read, because it's very much of an eye-opener.
Someone just asked to repeat the name of the book, please.
Yes. Erin Mayer, so E-R-I-N, Mayer, M-E-Y-E-R, The Culture Map.
Okay. And we have one more question for each of you before I hand back over to Amira, and she'll take over with all the questions from the audience that came in. But I'm going to stick with you, Daniel. So this is the last, because it kind of goes full circle here on the one hand, because we started with your own introduction. And I'd like to end, so my last question would be to talk about a worst case experience or best case experience that you really love to tell, a story that you like to tell. And I think some of this might have to do with your own personal experience.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my own experience is a good example. I think Vinted really went out of their way to welcome me, and to really create an amazing onboarding experience. I started in the middle of COVID. I think it was like month 3 of the pandemic. So very uncertain times. Travel was shut down. So it was a bit of a crazy situation, but they really went out of their way to kind of make sure that they injected as much certainty, as much clarity into the process as possible to kind of make up for that global uncertainty. Social inclusion was paramount. Yeah, it was just a really great experience. In terms of not such good experiences, I think this reminds me of Michael's point around onboarding. I've had experiences, I've seen people being hired into senior roles and being sort of forgotten about. They're so senior, they can onboard themselves. It's usually the slogan or the kind of narrative that is followed, and it just doesn't work, right? So I think you might just get away with it if the person's especially sort of motivated and excited but the more uncertainty there is, there's intercultural differences during COVID, so you can't even meet in person. I think it's really a recipe for disaster, and we've definitely run into that a couple of times.
Great, thanks. Tina, best case, worst case, you choose which one. You can have one of each or just one.
I'll just go for worst case, just to make it more exciting. Well, I think my experience, it's not only for executives, but is don't forget the visa situation. So I've had a worst case where we just had candidates that were visas were expiring, or you underestimated the workload it actually takes to get somebody on board from a different country. So you're like really excited and you think they can start in 3 months, and then you realize the visa process is taking forever, or people have been handing us in paperwork where everything had to go fast and you didn't double check, and all of a sudden you realize, oops, the visa is only valid for one employer and it's not for the other employer. So one really has to do a deep dive and has to have a lot of HR admin when you hire internationally in this case. So that would be my advice. Just don't forget to double check everything 3 times on that end, and check beforehand what the country relations are in regards to handing over candidates from a tax and social security point of view. My favorite subject.
Again, the things that people don't necessarily want to talk about, but in the end, sometimes it comes down to that, right? And it's hard. It's hard with smaller companies, newer companies that don't have that big HR team with lawyers and all that, relocation agents and things like that. So important, yeah. And thanks, Tina. And Michael, I'll give you the last word on that. And then after, yeah, I'll hand back over to Amira. Michael, best case, worst case, or both?
Cool. I also pick the worst case because I fully agree with Tina. It's a bit more entertaining. So don't finger pointing. I won't finger pointing at any organization I've worked for in the past. I'm making it a bit more generic. One of the worst examples I've seen during my career was hiring for an international role being located in Europe, having a very, very, very complicated hiring process, like super detailed, a lot of conversations with a lot of different stakeholders. We were talking with people across different time zones, so all the organization was very happy, and the hiring manager had a very, 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 very high stake to go over, and we're basically rejecting all the external candidates like one after another. And then via an internal network, we got an internal candidate in, and via relationships, all of a sudden, all those high stakes were basically going down. So the interview process got simplified. We did the same assessment then for external candidates. There were a couple of red flags for that person to basically change the role. Was located in Singapore. We got him over to Europe. He got the position. He was hired into that role, and after 1 month, that leader approached me and saying, "Michael, I'm super unhappy about the role." So we did a lot of effort to externally and internally reduced the assessment, got someone in who then said he's super unhappy in that role. And then it took us 1 year to clarify the situation, because obviously that person was in the company for a quite long period of time. So we needed to figure out which other position we can get him on, where he is basically giving the expertise and the or the performance he also wants to contribute, basically. On the other hand, having a team, a very large team, that person was responsible for, we need to get someone new for that and hiring. And that basically took 1 year to clarify the situation, with a lot of involvement from the people team, obviously, where there were already a lot of red flags mentioned very early in the process. So that that importance between defining criteria on hiring and then being very thorough on that, no matter who is coming into the process, even if you know that person or if it's an internal candidate, that's super important. And at that point went super wrong and very expensive.
Very expensive, very frustrating. So I guess the key learning there is stick to your strategy. I mean, you can always adapt your strategy if things aren't working, but sometimes these searches take a long time. And I think it's hard to keep your cool and have faith in the people searching, but stick with it. I think it's a good lesson to learn. Don't just change in the middle. Great. So I will stop asking those questions. Thanks everybody so much for those. And Amira is the master of the audience questions. So again, some came in before when you registered, you put in questions, and some are appearing here as well. So Amira, you take it away.
First of all, I want to thank all the panelists and Karen. That was such a riveting discussion. I learned so much from listening to you guys in the last 40 minutes. So thank you so much for being here. I just want to remind everyone, like Karen said, a few of you submitted questions before and a few of you are submitting questions right now. So we're going to have a mixture of these questions. We're going to try and answer as much as possible. So we're also keeping track of the questions. So if any of them are quite burning, we'll definitely get them answered to you. So I want to start with a very interesting question. What is one question you always ask an international leadership candidate during an interview?
I'll help with delegating here, but I think each of you will want to say something. I know Tina definitely said she wanted to answer this question. What do you always ask? What an international?
I would ask, when have you ever been in a situation where you had no clue what to do and you had to start from scratch? So, because again, it kind of goes with what Michael said before, don't underestimate that just because you're a senior leader, you can do everything. So really walk them, have examples of how they cope with this kind of situation and in others' contexts.
Dan, I think you like this question too.
Yes, so there's a few I'd ask. So I think having really one of the key qualities I'd look for in an international executive is empathy, right? Like really high level evolved empathy for how people feel, because without that and without having the ability to understand how people might react to different situations, I think it's very difficult to influence a large group of people. So I'd really sort of ask them to walk me through how their leadership behaviors have changed as the teams that they manage grew, right? So it's a very different experience to run a team of 3, 4 to leading a team of 500. What are the sort of how do those behaviors change over time? How do you think about leading and influencing a large group of people? Another one is around again, here I kind of look for self-awareness, which I think is also really key for a senior leader. How do you, what are the sort of 3 to 5 key characteristics, qualities, or skills someone in, say a chief growth officer must have, and how do you stack rank yourself against them? So that, they give you 3 or 4, and then they're sort of forced to give you the one they're strongest and then the one they're least strong, and kind of showing you that they're able to evaluate themselves in a critical way. So that's another one I often resort to.
Thanks. Michael, a quick one, or do you want to go for the next question? We have a bunch.
I can go a quick one. I'm normally doing not the most structured interviews in general. I'm very bad at that. My talent acquisition team hates me for that. But I'm normally, like, the first question I'm normally asking is really, what is important to you in personal life and in your career? So I really always want to try to understand who is sitting in front of me, rather than going for experience question, because for me that that fit with the organization and with the executive team in place needs to be to a certain degree there. So I'm always curious about that.
Okay, great. So Amira, next on the
question.
list.
So we actually had a previous question about what are the difficulties specifically when you're hiring international leadership roles in the tech industry. And we currently got one which is very similar. So I'm going to group them together and hand them over to you, Karen. So the one we got is, in the context of there being a talent shortage in the tech industry, how do you compete with other tech companies in attracting the best international executives?
Okay, actually, I'll just look at the three of you and who wants to take that one. Tech industry shortage. Tina.
I can go ahead. So I think there's two parts to this. The one is so IT roles specifically, and then tech in general. So overall, I would always say competition is there has to be a good interview journey. So for all of you, you can really differentiate through a good interview journey with good questions, not repeating the same questions, making sure who's the next person. I'm really thinking about, who needs to interview this candidate. And regarding tech roles specifically, it's a bit of a different challenge because we have to really ensure that you provide tech talents training and growth. So they don't just join the company for a role, but they really want to see how can I develop and will I learn in this role, especially with again, so PHP, etc. people. And for this, you have to have a different candidate journey in order to show trainings and shadowing or development in the role.
Okay, thanks, Tina. And Michael or Dan, you want to add something there, or you can if you don't want to. There are more questions coming. So no.
I can add a quick one. For me, super important is the whole networking piece of the work. So I do think you can do all the stuff operationally very, very correct. That doesn't help you if not the right people are attracted to you as an organization. So what for me always is very key is that you are staying active in the market and keeping conversations going with people, even if you don't have a current opening here, or if there's nothing happening at this point in time for that area from hiring perspective, but you want to keep people engaged with your company, you want to keep people interested joining the company at some point in time, so that you always have like talking about very senior international executives or leaders, like those people are having all those opportunities. So really want to hook them long term and being interested to join you at some point in time when the moment is right. So for me, that's very key.
Great.
Okay, thank you. We actually got a very interesting question right now in the comment section, which I would like to hand to you guys as well. So when it comes to hiring executives, do you see remote work as a perk or benefit? What are the most important points to consider when creating a remote work policy?
I think I'm going to put Dan right on the spot there because he has a lot of experience with remote work, especially in your role right now.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think, you could probably fill 200 webinars about remote work because it's such a broad topic. But when it sort of specific to the topic at hand today, which is international executives and remote work, I would say COVID's presented a really interesting situation where in the past, most companies were primarily office-based, and you had to look for candidates willing to relocate wherever you are when it came to sort of hiring from abroad. And I think given COVID and sort of the prevalence of remote work and then post-COVID hybrid work, which is what most companies are moving toward, your addressable market for executive talent has grown massively. So you no longer have to necessarily require leadership talent to relocate to where your HQ is. You can have them live in whatever ecosystem they currently live in, and then come up with an arrangement where they're able to travel, able to spend, a bunch of their time, just enough time to sort of build those relationships, etc., with your with the rest of the organization. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and I think it's going to lead to the further integration and mixing of the European tech ecosystem, rather than sort of having just hubs in Berlin, Amsterdam, London, etc. I think we're going to see them really start to converge into one very sort of integrated ecosystem. So it's an interesting era for hiring executive talent.
Absolutely, we see that as well at Rising. And could you just mention the cities where you have offices, Dan? Because I think that's
so we have offices. So our HQ is in Vilnius. We have a large office in Berlin. We also have offices in Prague and Utrecht, and we have a handful of people working remotely in London, Switzerland, France, and just a couple other countries as well.
Mm-hmm. So you know what you're talking about here. You're doing this right now, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Does anyone else want to touch on that one, or go to the next question? We have only 3 more minutes, so.
I want to maybe, sorry, again.
Please, yeah.
So for me, like I want to be a bit more controversial. I want to say I don't think it's a benefit or a perk. I think it's a must. Because being an international executive, you either way leading multi-site or multi-country teams. So at the end, you can't be with everyone all the time. That's just impossible. And I wouldn't think that you are getting the most attractive and senior executives by saying like you need to be in the office every day. Like that's not working. I don't think any executive wants to do that. I would say it's a must. And if you're not doing that, you're doing something fundamentally wrong as an organization.
Nice, strong words there. I think we have to wrap up soon. So either Tina, you might have the last word with this one. Would you like to say something or take a shot at the next question?
I think it's a more recent topic, so it would make sense to dive deep. I think, again, it reinforces how important communication skills are with international executives, because that's the key at the moment, especially in remote working. And I think the other challenge with Jose's question, I think is a really good one, is the laws are not as fast as we need to work at the moment. So, most companies are almost working more remotely, but the laws give us restrictions that don't allow us to even give those, you can work from Canada for 6 months or whatever, because there are restrictions. And I think one has to consider and really look at the current policies and to not get in a dangerous kind of situation where you're doing something illegal, despite you as a company wanting to give these benefits. So this is really the challenge you have right now as an HR, wanting to give more benefits, but having legal restrictions. And I'm hoping the laws will change quickly for us to provide it more in a safe area, if one can say that.
That's a good point. And there's a whole new industry opening up around that, right? New service providers who let you set up your company in a different country. It's really interesting, but we don't have time. So we have 1 minute left, and I think we have to wrap up. I'm going to look at Amira. Would you like to?
We have to wrap up, but Karen and panelists, really quick, we got 2 questions on this, so I don't want to leave the audience hanging. Any headhunters, agencies, or tool that you, moderator Karen, or panelists recommend? And we got another similar one in terms of external recruiting agencies. So if we can do like a quick round of answers on that, and then I can wrap up after.
Maybe we do a really quick, everyone says 1 sentence.
Yes.
External agencies, yes or no? Dan?
Yes, we do use external agencies. I think the more senior the talent, the more value you get out of external help. So we do that.
Great. Michael?
Yes, we also do that. I wouldn't recommend any on the spot, but it really depends on your hiring needs and what you want to achieve. So if anyone wants to have a more detailed answer on that, you can reach out afterwards on LinkedIn. Happy to support here.
Okay. Tina?
I agree to what Michael said.
Good answer. All right, Amira, do you want to try one more?
I think we're good. Karen, what about you? Because Rising is in that ecosystem. So if you have any last words, we'd love to hear.
No, I think I've had enough time speaking today. And if anyone wants to reach out and ask any more questions, you'll be able to find me easily, I think, after this hour. So I will now again say goodbye, but for real, and I'll say goodbye and thank you again to everybody.
We're just gonna have like a quick closing. I just wanna some admin before we leave. I'm gonna quickly share my screen for you guys. So I just want to let everyone know that we'll be sending the follow-up emails. Like I said, please stay on top of your emails because we're sending some very exciting links to the 14-day free trial to Kenjo software and the Excel link on our ATS software. I want to say a big thank you to Rising and to Karen for being a wonderful moderator, and to our esteemed panelists for joining us here today. Also, don't forget, next month, 19th of May, 10 a.m. CET, Kenjo is hosting another webinar, this time on leveraging employer branding for retaining and attracting talent. So please keep an eye out for that across our social media platforms and on our page. We look forward to hearing your feedback on the topics discussed in this webinar and on how we can help. I hope everyone, including the panelists, have a lovely day. And thank you all for joining us today. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.